So you'll hear a lot in the news media about the religious right and how much of a role they play in American politics, but you'll never hear them talk about the religious left. The religious left really doesn't get talked about often because of one reason or another, and that reason, I don't know what that reason is. But basically, you may ask, where does the religious left get its inspiration from to be so involved with political activism and to be more progressive? Because normally you think of religion and people affiliated with religion as being quite right-wing and traditionalist. Well, I'll say we because I identify myself on the religious left. We find our inspiration from Jesus and also in the Old Testament as well. There's a lot of mention about social justice in the Old Testament, especially by the way in which the Maccabees stood up against the oppressing Roman government, in which is celebrated currently today as Hanukkah, and we get our inspiration from Jesus and his mission being that Jesus as the offspring of God went to the tables of the money changers and upended them, and that Jesus hung out with those who were poor, those who were needy, those who were considered different than Jesus. And that's where the religious left gets its inspiration from. It is just by the way in which Jesus used the platform as being the offspring of God and to spread a radically progressive message at the time. And for even in the Old Testament with the Jewish roots, with the Maccabees standing up against the oppressing Roman government. And again, it's just there are multiple instances in the Bible about social justice and being progressive and being what is considered the religious left. Well, you may ask, how has the religious left been involved in the United States history, and how have they advocated for progressive change? Well, it starts with the American Revolution itself. The American Revolution was, for its time, considered to be an extremely progressive thing, to want to rebel against the King of England at the time, and to basically say screw tradition, and to go with a democratically elected leadership of the country, being such that we have an elected leadership in our country, like the Congress, like the president, in various elected positions within our government, instead of it being by the divine right of kings and queens. And for the time, that was considered a radically progressive thing. And again, it was that Jesus challenging the money changers thing. It goes back to that idea of Jesus challenging the money changers idea of the Maccabees rebelling against the Romans in the Old Testament. It goes against that time. Another instance is the ending slavery and the civil rights movement is when the religious left was really involved in society. The religious left was really involved in at the time it was considered the religious left, and ending the slavery movement, because of how those before us in the current time were inspired by that message that Jesus pushed of helping those who are different than us. And that's what inspired the civil rights movement for those who are persons of color. And the women's rights movement also was very much so inspired by helping out those who are different. And again, it's helping out those who are different. That's a commonality amongst this, is being inspired by that, helping out the others, challenging society. That's a commonality you'll see amongst the religious left. And you'll see a lot of it being manifested in that. In the getting back to the women's rights movement, is even the Declaration of Sentiments was signed in a church in Seneca Falls, New York. That is an extremely powerful thing. That the document that inspired the women's rights movement was signed in a church. And Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, all these leaders in the women's rights movement spoke at churches. And the church played an important role, a crucial role in the women's rights movement. And the civil rights movement, you have leaders like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and you have people like, currently you have William C. Barber, or the Reverend John Lawson. You'll have a lot of these people who are pastors, who are pastors, or who are women who are involved with the church. You'll see a commonality that these are people that are involved with the church in these progressive changes here in the United States. And that is the most powerful thing about these two cases of people being involved with women's rights, with civil rights for African Americans. And another movement is a lot of the movements you'll see were also surrounding like anti-war things. You'll see a lot of religious organizations be very anti-war, because the Vietnam War was a perfect example. You had a lot of pastors who would wear and rabbis who would wear their clergy attire to go and protest against the Vietnam War. I'm not saying that I agreed with what their sentiments were, but again, it's the church being involved in social activism and fighting for those who are different, fighting for social change, challenging the government and those who are in power. So that is a little bit about the inspiration and the multiple in three of the many times that which the religious left here in the United States has been involved with social activism here in the United States of America. So I guess peace of the Lord be with you, and be inspired to be rabble rousers like Jesus was, and like the Maccabees were, rebelling against the Roman government, the oppressing Roman government. So I guess that's something to be inspired by. So peace of the Lord be with you. Shalom and ahava, peace and love be with you. See you later.